Tierney, oh, le grand pont pour éliminer Furlong. Qu'est-ce qu'il lui a fait là? Qu'est-ce qu'il lui fait, Kieran Tierney? Oh, Kieran Tierney, c'est quoi? C'est quoi ça? Il vient souhaiter une très bonne année aux supporters d'Arsenal. Kieran Tierney, quel rush! Magnifique! 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 Kieran Tierney! Kieran Tierney! Magnifique! Oula! Oula! Magnifique! Kieran Tierney! Magnifique!
This is Arsecast Extra.
Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Gunnerblog. James, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, Andrew. Welcome to 2022.
Yeah, it's pretty quiet so far. I don't think much has happened. Not sure what we're going to talk about on this.
It did begin with a bang, didn't it? I mean, wow. What a game to kick off the year with.
It really was. And you know what was... When you think about a 12 game on New Year's Day, when people have been out, I know this year is a bit different. It probably wasn't as raucous in terms of people being out and celebrating and staying out all night because of everything. But yeah, it was a hell of a game and a hell of an atmosphere and a hell of a performance and such a lot to talk about and such a lot to take from it. And I think what I just want to do at the start is just put on record how much I liked and enjoyed the way that we played and the performance and just everything about what we did yesterday. Well, apart from a couple of things, obviously, but in general, I really loved it. I felt invigorated by it in a way. I was really encouraged by it, and it's strange to sit here after losing a game, particularly losing a game in pretty heartbreaking fashion, like in the fourth minute of 6 minutes of injury time. It's a real kick in the bollocks. But I feel positive about what I saw from Arsenal yesterday and encouraged. And I think there are real signs, that something is happening. So while we might go off track a bit and while we might talk about other things and other incidents and whatever, I don't want it to sound like I'm making any excuses for us or anything like that. So just on the record, I fucking loved the way we played yesterday, and I wasn't expecting it. Sort of like going to a movie where you think, oh, I'm not sure about this one. It turns out to be great. It was way beyond what I expected. That first half in particular, I have to say.
Yeah, and I think aspects of the second half, in terms of how we defended with 10 men, in the build-up to a lot of these big games, we've asked ourselves, we feared we might lose, and we've sort of asked, well, what sort of defeat might be acceptable, if you know what I mean? It's sort of an uncomfortable question, but how can you lose but emerge with hope? And I think Arsenal demonstrated that yesterday. They found that balance. I know we would have all rather drawn or won, but I think Arsenal played brilliantly, and any neutral observer recognises that Arsenal were the better team for the majority of that game, and certainly deserved a lot more than they got. So, yeah, it is an odd feeling to emerge from a defeat with such a degree of pride. And I can't remember genuinely the last time a losing team got a reaction like that from the fans at full time at the Emirates Stadium. I don't feel like there have been too many kind of noble defeats in the last few years. Yeah,
that's true. But it came because of what we saw, how we did what we did. Yeah, I think you're right to point out that we were certainly the better team with 11 men. And I think when we were down to 10 men, there was a lot to like about that as well, because it's not the first time this season that we've gone down to 10 men against Manchester City. And in the first game, it fell apart for us, that we did not cope at all with being down to 10 men in the first game. And I think if you're looking at that first game against City and then this game against Man City, and you're using it as a kind of yardstick to measure where we're going, what we've done, what kind of progress we've made, you can really see that. And I you were there, and I can't speak for anybody who was there, but certainly the reaction that I saw from the crowd was in no small part, look, everyone's sort of riled up. There's a sense of injustice, a sense of us against the world. But that wouldn't be quite as strong if we didn't actually deserve something from the game. You know, the performance, the effort, the endeavour, the commitment of the players with 10 men to defend it the way they defended. You know, we have this pantomime villain, in inverted commas, kind of thing going on with the referee. But I'm sure people in that ground were like me and maybe not expecting something quite like this against a team as good as Manchester City, because we've talked about the gap. We've talked about how far we have to go, and we still have, you know, a long way to go and things to improve and all of that kind of stuff. But yesterday, it felt just a little bit like we have closed the gap, even if the result didn't, you know, go our way in the end. When it comes to performance levels, when it comes to being competitive against them, I mean, that was kind of toe-to-toe stuff that we engaged in yesterday, and we did not come off the worst of it until the sort of the bad things happened. I know that sounds sort of self-evident, but you know what I'm saying?
No, I mean, I don't think many teams will do that to Manchester City. You know, the way in which we kind of took the game to them, particularly in the kind of the last half hour of the first half, we were absolutely outstanding, and they were struggling to live with us at that time. And I actually wasn't there yesterday because I was waiting on some COVID test results. So I put my ticket on sale on the ticket exchange thing, you know, and it was quite close to kickoff time. It was only like, I don't know, 10 hours before the game or something like that. And I sort of thought, I don't know if this ticket will sell, you know, because it's New Year's Day. It's Man City. Everyone thinks we're probably going to get beat. And it got snapped up straight away off the ticket exchange. And I thought, that's quite encouraging. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
People want to go out and watch this game. There's already a sort of greater sense of excitement and optimism than perhaps I'd anticipated. And speaking to people who were there, I think that stadium, I mean, at halftime, it was absolutely buzzing. I think people were talking about this as one of the best Emirates Stadium performances since we've been in that ground. And I think at full time, yes, there was a great sense of injustice, but as I said before, still an enormous sense of pride. And I think it's really, really encouraging. I think it demonstrates how far we've come. I think in other ways it demonstrates there's still a way to go. But I think, it speaks to the general sense of direction around the club, which is really positive. And the result is disappointing, but actually it doesn't feel like the most important thing today, to me anyway. Yeah.
I know what you mean, and it is that line between, well, look, you can't celebrate defeat. Nobody is saying you can or should celebrate a defeat in any way, because ultimately it's about winning, it's about gaining points and everything else. But, you know, you'd have to work hard not to look at what we did yesterday and not feel happy and pleased about the way that we played, about what this team is doing together, the way it's growing together, the way it appears to be developing in a way perhaps a bit more quickly than we thought. And look, it's not long ago that we were bemoaning what was happening to us after the United game and after the Everton game, but there's a resilience, there's a character. We're playing, I think, the kind of football that people have needed to see from Arsenal to truly get on board, if that makes sense, to believe in what this project or process, however you want to call it, you know, you can win games, but if you're not convincing people by how you play football, it's going to be difficult. And I think what we've seen this season, after those first 3 games and after that little blip with the United and Everton game, we've seen this team play football that we kind of associate with what we think Arsenal should be, if that makes sense. And it's not just a style thing. You've got to have style. You've got to have substance as well. And we're producing results with it. So, you know, the encouraging things that were evident in the performance yesterday, like you, they're not completely washed away for me by the result, because I think there were some mitigating factors, obviously down to 10 men. It was a very late winner for Manchester City and everything else. But, you know, my sense of, pride maybe is the right word, in how we acquitted ourselves yesterday is still very strong. It's very strong, even if there are elements about yesterday and the whole thing that I find frustrating, and I'm sure we'll come to those.
Yeah, and I my gut instinct says that this performance will actually be remembered. I think people will remember that moment where Saka scores that goal and he goes into the crowd and there's that, amazing shot of him hugging the fans, and I don't think all that will be lost. And I think the manner in which we took the game to the best team in the league, I think will be something we're still reflecting on come the end of the season, and hopefully it provides a bit of a platform for the next stage in this team's development, which seems to be accelerating, like you said.
Do you think, like the pictures of the players yesterday at the final whistle, they were absolutely gutted to within an inch of their lives, and there's a shot of Ramsdale helping Ben White up off the ground, and Xhaka standing there with his head bowed, and Tomiyasu is looking absolutely crestfallen, and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, do you think they will benefit or will take something from this game in terms of their own belief and their own confidence that, we have had an issue this season, and maybe going back a bit in the big games where you're looking to measure yourselves against the very best, to gauge how far you have to go, and you get pumped by Man City in the first game this season, albeit with 10 men. We also had 10 men yesterday and didn't get pumped. The Liverpool game, another one where we're going, just be competitive. Maybe we don't expect you to win this game, but don't make it easy for them. Make them work for whatever it is they get from the game, and we didn't. But this game, we absolutely did. Man City had to work really hard to get 3 points. I don't think they deserved 3 points at all. But they really had... It was a struggle for them yesterday. It was a struggle, even with 10 men. Think about what did Aaron Ramsdale have to do?
No,
yesterday?
He didn't make a save, really, in the game.
Exactly. He couldn't do anything about the goal, and the penalty is a penalty. But, the players in front of him yesterday worked so hard to prevent danger that when the ball did come towards him, he really had very little to do, apart from a couple of good crosses and takes, from corners or set pieces or whatever it was. He really didn't have very much to do, and that tells you how hard Arsenal worked to keep Man City at bay and how effective it was.
Yeah, I think we defended well in the game. I thought, Tomiyasu was particularly good. I thought he was outstanding, actually. You're right. The keeper was not worked very much at all, and not many teams will say that against Man City. I mean, I hope they can take a lot from this. They were gutted at full time, as was I. I think if we were recording this podcast on the full-time whistle, maybe I wouldn't yet be in this place of kind of pride and looking at the positives, because there was a lot of anger and frustration and disappointment. I probably would have been, calling for somebody's head on a spike. Maybe, who's that guy? Peter Walton's head on a spike. Something like that. But
it'd stop him talking absolute bullshit anyway. But I hope they can use it. And actually, a bit of a sense of injustice. It's not the worst thing, not the worst ingredient for a team. No. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. The us against them. And I think this will come up, I think, when we talk about the refereeing decisions. But that sense of injustice, this they're out to get us thing, can forge a kind of solidarity and togetherness within a squad that can be very useful if you can harness that in the right way. If you feel like you've been fucked over by the opposition, by whatever, by the officials, by VAR, by whatever, and you can use that and you can turn that into a positive. I'm absolutely sure that on the training ground this week, Mikel Arteta will be using that as much as possible and saying, look at what you did in that game. Look at how you played. Look at how you competed. Look how how hard you worked and how rewarded you were because of that in terms of the overall performance. I know the result didn't go our way. It just fell right at the death, and that's really unfortunate and really heartbreaking. But he will be accentuating the many, many positives from this game, and there were loads of them. So let's delve into a few specifics before we go into the truly dark stuff, which we're going to have to talk about. But where do you start? I mean, Thomas Partey played the best game he's ever played for us yesterday, and the irony of that, of course, is that he's going away to AFCON now, and we don't have him for a few weeks. So that's great timing. But it really was the kind of performance that you need from a player like him if you are going to do what we did in that game against that kind of opposition. This is what you need from him, and he was absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, he was brilliant. I think it was a great collective performance, but for me, Tomiyasu and Partey were the outstanding individuals, and he was sensational in midfield. I mean, I think he was in 15 duels, won more than half of them. Collision after collision, his use of the ball was intelligent. There was that moment in the second half where he went on that run up the left wing. I don't know if you remember, but kind of carried the ball almost single-handedly up the field. He was really excellent. I think this was up there, if not better than his performance at Old Trafford last season.
I agree. Yeah.
The issue has been consistency. I think a big issue recently has been confidence, and I think we saw some of that returning to him yesterday.
It's happened over the last few weeks, hasn't it? We've talked about it.
He was good at Norwich. Yeah. It has happened over the last few weeks. I think playing with Odegaard, playing with Xhaka has helped him a bit in that regard. But he was great. It's a tremendous loss, actually, to lose him right now. Just at the moment, he appears to have clicked, and he will feel it all the more keenly because of what a great performance this was against, let's say, a brilliant midfield in its own right in Manchester City's team.
Who else do you want to talk about on an individual basis? It seems a bit harsh because the collective performance was great, but can I just, before you maybe pick the man who scored the goal, probably.
Yeah, sure.
Can I just give a shout to Tomiyasu because I think the impact that he has had on this team maybe goes a little bit under the radar. He has sort of been a game changer in that position for us. When we talked about right back, we had imperfect options going into this season. Hector is gone, but Callum Chambers was never really a long-term option for me. Cedric, definitely not a long-term option. Ainsley Maitland-Niles, not a long-term option, and didn't, wasn't being picked there anyway. So we had an issue in that position, and it was one of those things that we had to deal with via the transfer market. And he has been an absolutely outstanding purchase. The consistency is amazing. And yesterday, he really had Sterling banged to rights every single time, physically, in terms of his positioning, his pace, his defensive awareness. He is just a brilliant defender. So, before we go on and talk about other people, I wanted to give him a shout because I thought he was just fantastic.
Yeah, Arsenal really found a gem there in the transfer market, and they took a slight gamble on a player that others maybe had been reluctant to take, and they've been really rewarded for it. He's been outstanding. And I think the greatest testament to him would probably be to ask Ben White or Bukayo Saka, say, what they think of Tomiyasu. And I bet they would eulogise about him because he is the kind of player who makes other players look better by providing solidity, by providing a platform. I actually think Albert Stuivenberg spoke about him in one of his interviews around the game. I think he was asked about his performance, and he was very positive about him. Sometimes Arteta's a bit reticent to go into individuals, but he spoke about, it was when he came back into the team, that was it, about the stability that he brings. And that's such an underrated quality in the team, especially in the defence. I also think that we should consider that this is a guy who's just coming back from COVID, who even if he didn't have symptoms, was not able to train with the group. He's had to train on his own, essentially, in isolation to retain his fitness, come straight back into the side. Very little training, couple of days training, I think, beforehand, and produces a performance like that against Raheem Sterling, who's a very difficult player to mark, whose movement is outstanding. Yeah, he's just been great, and I mean, you know, he's completely changed our perception of not just that position, but that entire side of the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak highly enough about him. Let's talk about the goal then. Very nice goal. Lot to like about it. The way that we won the ball back. I think it was Ben White made a good tackle on Kevin De Bruyne, sparked the attack. Granit Xhaka, good first-time pass forward into Odegaard, and that's not always been Xhaka's wheelhouse. You know, that's not to be critical, but, you know, he is sometimes a bit, you know, I can think of many occasions where the ball has come to Granit Xhaka in that position and it's gone backwards or sideways, and you can hear the moans from the crowd because they want us to go forward. And I thought one aspect, and I know we'll have to talk about another aspect of his performance yesterday, was how quickly he moved the ball. Whether it was just the day that was in it, whether that's something, you know, he's been instructed to do, I don't quite know, but he used the ball much more quickly, fewer touches. Maybe that's what you got to do in a game against Manchester City. You know that if you take a few touches of the ball, they're going to close you down. So the instruction might well have been, when you get it, look for the option quickly. Odegaard then to Tierney, lovely ball from Tierney, nice bit of play from Lacazette as well, just to stand in front of Nathan Ake. So Saka had the angle, and what a lovely finish, just controlled into the bottom corner. Great goal.
Yeah, really great goal. Beautifully worked. We've spoken about Lacazette's work off the ball, the kind of things he does that are show a little bit of experience and canniness. I thought it was a really good block off from him to let Saka get the shot away. Good finish too. You know, we hoped that a couple of goals against Norwich is something he could carry into the next few games, and he seemed to have the composure in that moment. And yeah, a good forward pass from Xhaka in the build-up, first time as well, round the corner. I think you have to look at it and say, when he plays that pass, actually, it's so important. Both Lacazette and Odegaard have taken up essentially the same position. They're sort of playing as a little pair of number 10s directly in front of him. And when you've got those guys buzzing around those areas in that space, in between the lines of the opposition, then it's easier to play those forward passes because they're the target. And, you know, working in tandem, they've really helped us. And there's a lovely shape about the attack with Lacazette and Odegaard kind of dropping in and Martinelli and Saka spinning out and using width and playing very high. And, yeah, it was a great goal and just a brilliant moment, really. I mean, it felt like the culmination of weeks of progress, you know, to take the lead in sort of deserving fashion against this Man City team. The place from the television pictures seemed to absolutely erupt. Yeah,
I mean, what I liked about this first half in particular was that, like, early on in the game, the first couple of minutes, it was a bit sort of possession for both sides. And then Manchester City started to do the thing that they do, which is just this relentless possession that suffocates you, that is hard to cope with. You know, I don't find them an enjoyable team to play against, obviously, because it's been so difficult against them. I don't find them a particularly enjoyable team to watch, even if they're playing somebody else. It's just that whatever that style of football is. But we got back into the game. We didn't allow them, which I thought was really great. A really nice aspect to our performance, that we did not allow them to push us back and push us back and push us back. And we went forward as quickly as we could in those moments. When we got the ball back, we started to go forward, which I think had some impact on the way that City were set up themselves. So to sort of make sure that the balance didn't tip completely towards City, and you end up going in at halftime going, well, it'd be nice if we could, you know, hang on to the ball for more than, you know, 3 or 4 passes at a time, you know, to really be on top in that first period. You know, maybe there was some fatigue or whatever with City. Pep was talking about how they were so tired.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we had to respond and we had to react. And I think the competitiveness in the duels, winning second balls, just not allowing City to do what they do, the players deserve an awful lot of credit for that.
Yeah, I think we played with great aggression, and I don't mean that in the physical sense. I mean that in the kind of dynamic way in which we attacked. So the positioning of Martinelli and Xhaka was really aggressive. The runs they made in behind, into space, were aggressive. And that just gave City a problem all the time. They were worried about those two for that entire first half, and with good reason. And yeah, we responded well to it, like you say, a period of some possession from them early in the game, which looked like they might settle into a rhythm. We didn't allow that to be the case. We disrupted things. When we got the ball, we really attacked with purpose. It was just a really great performance, and the team were flying at that point.
Yeah. A nearly day for Gabriel Martinelli, I think we have to say, and we got to talk about him, obviously.
Yeah.
But, the really encouraging aspects to his performance. There was a shot which curled just over the top corner. There was that brilliant run where I think maybe a little fortuitously the ball came back to him when I think Cancelo got in front of him and he shot just wide. That kind of positivity, that kind of intent to go at Manchester City was great to see. And I suppose we'll have to talk about the other miss in a moment, but I mean, do we go on now to the second half? And
just to say on Martinelli, I do think there were moments where he could have been slightly more refined in what he produced. There was one where he went through on the left-hand side, and I think if he'd squared it, Xhaka looked like he might have got onto it, but he went for the shot instead. But all that said, it's very difficult to be critical of a player whose first instinct is to go for goal, because he is generally a good finisher, and there is something so direct about the way he plays that's really added to this team. So I do think there's an extent to which you have to take a little bit of rough with all the smooth that he brings in that role. And I'm not, I think he had 5 shots on the day, and nobody else in this team gets close to that, really. And I think that's the threat that he carries.
So, look, we'll come to his other miss in a moment.
I guess we'll get to that crazy few minutes, right, where the game swung on its head. Basically.
So, I mean, it was all going great until it wasn't. So, the first... I mean, we haven't even talked about the Odegaard penalty incident. But I
think it's sort of difficult to discuss one without the other, isn't it?
It is. So, penalty for you?
The Odegaard one?
Yeah.
I think so. But in fairness, I would have required a lot of replays to reach that assessment. What do you think?
I thought in real time, absolutely a penalty.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
And I'll come on to that later. But what did you think based on the replay?
Less conclusive until I saw the replay at half-time that they showed that they didn't show during the game itself. And there's a replay at half-time which shows that Ederson clearly gets Odegaard's foot and then the ball. So that made my mind up for me. I think that's absolutely a penalty, and I am disgusted that we didn't get it. I think it's a wrong decision. I don't know why in real time the referee didn't blow for it. Was he just waiting to see? I have a theory
on this.
Go on.
Yeah, I feel, because my gut instinct is that in real time, in a pre-VAR era, I think the referee blows for that, and I think he probably blows for the other one as well. Basically, my sense is he's deferring. That's my sense.
You see, okay, well, I would have to disagree very slightly in the sense that for the second one, he absolutely is definitive in his action when he looks at what happens and when he sees the way that Silva falls. He's gesturing at him like, come on, no, get up. That's not a penalty. So I don't think in that instance he was awaiting VAR at all. I think he'd made his mind up on the spot. Now, he would know that if he's made a mistake, VAR can call it back and have a look at it. But he was quite definitive when you look at the replays. He gestures at him a number of times to get up as if to say, no, that's not enough contact for a penalty.
True, yeah, I had forgotten that. I just feel that, well, yeah, that was my impression watching the Odegaard one. I felt like he'd hedged his bets and let VAR look at it.
I do agree with that. I agree with that. Where do you stand on the Xhaka one? Is it a penalty for you or is it not?
I think it is, personally. I think it is.
I think it is as well. I mean, it is.
And you're talking to a man, an ungainly man who played left back for many years and has been turned inside out like that many a time.
It's clumsy, isn't it? It really is. And I think he did dive, but applying my... Would I be unhappy if that wasn't given to us metric? I absolutely would. I mean, I think if Bukayo Saka turns Nathan Ake like that and he hangs a leg out and grabs his shirt on the way down, we would be absolutely fuming if that penalty wasn't given.
Yeah, my instant reaction in real time actually was penalty, and nothing I saw in the replays really dissuaded me of that. I know he's going down. I think what seals it for me is the tug. The leg comes out, and that's problematic. But if the player's already on his way down, I think there's a chance you get away with that. The tug, to me, is unnecessary, and I have no idea why he's doing it.
Well, it's because he is who he is.
Yeah, of course. Apart from the obvious, he Granits, therefore he Xhakas. Yeah, but apart from that, so I think penalty. But then, of course, you get onto the conversation of the review process.
Well, exactly, and this is where I think the real frustration comes in, because why was that one looked at and the Odegaard one wasn't looked at? And this situation we have where, the wording about clear and obvious error is just it's absolute nonsense. It's a penalty or it isn't. It's a foul or it isn't. If a referee makes a mistake because he can't see something in a split second when camera angles can show him something different, then use that. Use it to make the right decision, not whether a referee has made a clear and obvious error. It's a way for them to hide behind inconsistency. It drives me absolutely crazy. And I think there was a good point somebody made on Twitter here. Martin Webb. He said, VAR took multiple angles for Odegaard, somehow concluding it wasn't a foul, but for Xhaka, Atwell was only shown one angle on the monitor. Other angles showed that he was already going down before the shirt pull. I think VAR showed him the most, how do I put this? The one that looked most like a penalty and not all the others.
Sure, the most incriminating.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think the question of why, BT on their coverage in the UK produced this half-time view of the Edison challenge where it looked very clearly like a penalty.
Yeah.
In fairness, from the other angles, it was much less clear. But why was that angle not the one assessed when we were watching the VAR footage, if you see what I mean?
Well, surely VAR have that angle, right? VAR must have all the angles. Are we right to assume that they have all the possible angles to look at something?
Yeah, I think if the TV cameras have access to it, I think we can assume VAR do as well. But the problem is, in my opinion, you say it's either a foul or it's not a foul. But the issue is that there is always human interpretation, right? And essentially what we've done is outsource that from a guy on the pitch with a whistle to a guy in a studio. But he's still a guy with an interpretation, and unfortunately that's always going to have a significant margin for error, right?
I don't know what interpretation you need when a goalkeeper goes sliding in, kicks the opponent's foot, and in doing so projects the ball away. He doesn't make a good clean tackle. Like, literally, that is a free kick anywhere else on the pitch. If that incident happens, this is not something that is I don't think it's subjective. I don't think it needs to be interpreted. It's either did he kick his foot or did he not? Did he kick the ball first or did he kick Odegaard first? The replay show he kicked Odegaard first. That's a foul. It's in the box. Therefore, it's a penalty. I know what you're saying about that in other aspects and certain other situations and scenarios which aren't quite as clear cut. But this is not something that's open to interpretation as far as I'm concerned.
I know what you mean. I guess the issue is that if he's looking at the same stuff we're looking at, what we were looking at immediately after that penalty appeal wasn't as clear as that. And so the question is, why is he looking at the wrong thing, I guess? Also, I find the charade of like, now the referee has to go and look at the screen. If the referee goes to look at the screen, the decision's already made.
Yeah.
Like, those referees aren't overturning those decisions when they're told to look at the screen.
Yeah.
So I find all that sort of pantomime of he's going to look over at it, but he never changes his mind. It's a bit odd.
Look, I'm being very cynical when I say this, and I said this on Twitter, and I said this in the blog today, but the Premier League is an entertainment medium. It's a sport, but it's a thing. If decisions are being made that are designed to create drama and all of that kind of stuff, I wouldn't be at all surprised.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's a bit like F1. I don't really follow F1 particularly closely, but I've never heard F1 talked about as much as when there was that huge controversy in the final race of the season. I don't know how aware of this you are.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm aware of it, and I'm not an F1 fan. Do you know what I mean? So that's how these incidents can become sensational news stories in their own right. I don't doubt that VAR does good numbers on social media. I don't doubt that for a second. But as a fan in a stadium, it's incredibly frustrating. I think as a fan at home, it's pretty frustrating too, because we're guessing at what's going on. We don't know the dialogue. As was becoming clear in this conversation, we don't know what they have access to, why they're choosing to view certain angles and not certain others.
Yeah.
It's opaque.
Well, exactly. And I think the only way that you can improve it is to make it transparent. And I think that applies to referees and the PGMOL as well. That there needs to be greater transparency about decision making. Why can't the referees be mic'd up? Why can't we hear what their thought processes are? Why can't we hear the communication when something like this is going on between the referee and whoever's in the fucking room in Stockley Park? You know, it's infuriating. It really is. That sense of injustice is fueled by the fact that they got to have theirs reviewed by the referee and we did not. And nobody knows precisely why that's the case.
Yeah.
So when there's a lack of information, we do the colouring in ourselves. And maybe we delve into theories and stuff that don't really add up, but you know, that's on them to fix.
And when I talk about that subjectivity and that human error, it comes around that conversation of clear and obvious error, right? Ultimately, a bloke in a room watching clips on a screen is deciding that's a clear and obvious error and that's not. And that is where the vagueness surely is problematic. That's, I think you've nailed it there. They're deciding what's a clear and obvious error rather than looking at the incidents on their own merits. In relation to the laws of the game. Yeah, the rules of the game, the laws of the game. So, I mean, look, there were a few things yesterday about the referee's performance. There was a fairly rigorous foul. It was accidental. I think it was Rodri, wasn't it, on Martinelli on the edge of the box, and he gave a corner. You know, that kind of thing. That was fucking off the charts on if that was Granit Xhaka scale.
It genuinely was. Like, if Xhaka had gone this is maybe a question that we'll keep for part 2, but there is I think an interesting discussion to be had about Xhaka and the way that he is refereed, and how you deal with that. But there were incidents, obviously, where Manchester City players made fouls and weren't censured and weren't booked, and it seemed that every time an Arsenal player batted their eyelids, the yellow card was coming out. Saka got booked, Holding got booked, Gabrielle got booked for what was described afterwards as a normal remark. And what I think it was asking why wasn't the Arsenal penalty reviewed, and the Manchester City one was. So it was in the wake of that incident. There's a few stories about, whether it was scuffing up the penalty spot. There's a clip of him being pushed into the referee, and maybe the referee booked him then, but I don't think that was it. I think it was...
No. It was when he ran up to the referee and said something in the immediate aftermath of the penalty. I mean, we're always hearing his English isn't particularly good, so I'll be curious to know what he said.
Yeah.
I hope, maybe his English is better than me.
Steiffenberg said it was a normal remark. It wasn't abusive. There wasn't any swearing or anything like that. So he's on a yellow card, which could be described as soft. And then we have this 30 seconds, which just changed the game.
Just on that first booking for Gabrielle, I think if you look at it, the referee actually is surrounded by a couple of other Arsenal players and already has his card out of his pocket. And Gabrielle then runs over and says something, and the referee just sort of shows him the card. It's like, I'm going to book one of you for this dissent. Yeah. Exactly. And Gabrielle volunteers himself essentially by charging in, but I doubt very much it's particularly related to the specific words that Gabrielle used. I think it was more of a booking for the team for their collective show of dissent.
But even that's bullshit, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. But I'm just explaining what I think happened.
Right.
But then we could have taken the lead, right?
Yeah, we could have taken the lead. I mean, I'm not trying to make any excuses for Gabriel Martinelli, but I think many people have noticed this, and we had a little chat about it. What is the referee doing in there? What is he doing? And at this level of football, split seconds can mean a lot. The fact that Martinelli had to adjust and go around him, I still think he should score from where he is, from that angle, but the referee doesn't help either.
Yeah, what he's doing is so the ball's headed over Ederson and it's heading towards the goal line, and the referee sprints towards the goal line to see if the ball was going to go over the line. It seems to me anyway. But that's the one thing he doesn't need any interpretation for. There's literally going to be a buzzer that goes off or not if it goes over the line.
Exactly.
So get out the way. It definitely affects the way Martinelli approaches the ball. Yeah, obviously he should still score. But it wasn't helpful. That's for sure. But that is a moment as well on which the game turns, because if Arsenal go back in front there, who knows what happens? But
I tell you what doesn't happen is we don't go down to 10 men in the very next passage of play.
Yeah, that's true.
What's your view on that?
The Gabrielle sending off. I think it's really unfortunate to be sent off for those 2 yellow cards. I do, especially the first one, given that it seemed like he barely did anything. All the stuff about the penalty spot, I think, was a complete red herring that BT latched onto that was nothing to do with why he got booked. Ramsdale scuffed up the penalty spot as well. I think it goes on every time a penalty is awarded in every game, in every division, pretty much. I think that having been booked, he took a risk in a big way doing that, and he should have... I think it speaks to a bit of a loss of composure from the team after the feeling of injustice around the penalty.
Yeah, I think he was really fired up, to be honest. Yeah. He was really heated up after the penalty. They're feeling that sense of injustice, like you say, and he just lost his composure for a couple of minutes. Yeah. Maybe in another 2 or 3 minutes he would have settled down and calmed down.
I think so.
I've watched it again and again and again, and it's a very deliberate foul. Really is.
He knows he's bucking the guy there.
Yeah, I know there's an element of it looks a little bit accidental, or what can he do to get out of the way?
Standing his ground.
Yeah, but he doesn't really. He sort of, when you look at it again, there's an arm in the face and across his chest, and then he pulls his hands away like he knows. That's a very deliberate foul. And on a yellow card, you just can't.
Do you remember him getting...
it was like it's almost exactly the same as the red card he got last season against Southampton. It was a foul on Theo Walcott. Pretty much the same kind of foul as well.
Yeah,
although
almost
I think,
identical as I remember it.
I think that one against Southampton was a lot... it felt a lot more harsh, I think, anyway. The Southampton one than this one. But same area of the pitch, same kind of incident, second yellow card. A weird symmetry.
It is an odd symmetry. I basically think that Arsenal, after they conceded that penalty, I just think emotions ran high. And I think that, what they needed was somebody... It's not an easy job, but somebody to say, let's all just, chill, stay in the game. It doesn't help that the guy who's probably the obvious leader on the pitch, Granit Xhaka, is the guy who conceded the penalty. So it's as involved in that emotionally as everybody else, if not more so. It was unwise from Gabrielle. And potentially quite costly. I mean, again, it's difficult to predict. There's a funny thing about going down to 10 men there. Like, obviously it hurts Arsenal, but in another way, it made the task very clear. And I think the lack of openness from us going forward presented Man City with a different problem in a way.
Yeah, I mean, look, all you can do at that point of a game with half an hour to go against Manchester City is stay organised, stay compact, keep your shape, defend well. And look, we did that. We really did that. We talked about it at the top of this until, right at the death, that goal goes in. I mean, I have to say, it's not a good header from Rob Holding.
It's bad defending, actually, all round, I think, on that goal. You could see it, couldn't you? When De Bruyne had the ball and he lifted it, it looked like trouble straight away. Cesc tweeted. Did you see Cesc's tweet about this? Cesc tweeted saying, when De Bruyne has the ball in that position, you have to drop off as a defender because he can drop it in behind you. And
just
Rob Holding, and to be fair, the entire back four don't really drop off. And Thomas Partey, who was brilliant on the day, and I'm not knocking any individual, doesn't really follow Rodri into the box when he goes beyond him. And they get a break. They get such a break even then. It's a horrible goal. It's a gut-wrenching goal to concede.
Such a scabby fucking goal, all right.
I know. And from a player who got away with a fair amount in the game, I think that's the thing about, as much as we could talk about the individual refereeing decisions, and some of them were really infuriating, I think the overall thing about the game is it feels like there were so many 50-50 moments that didn't go our way.
Yeah.
So I would include the 2 penalty appeals. Maybe you could say Gabriel sending off, certainly the Martinelli chance, and even the way the ball ricochets for them in the 93rd minute to nick it. It feels like across those, we didn't really get any breaks.
No rub of the green at all.
No, and that's why it's pretty infuriating, You just, if 1 or 2 of those things goes our way instead of theirs, there's just no way in hell we lose this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we stay with 11 men, it wouldn't have been impossible for us to win that game either. We were playing that well and we were making chances, and City, they weren't as good as I've seen them in the past, but I think that primarily was down to us and how good we were and how well we managed the game and how well we managed the various threats that they have. So I think another thing just to point out, of course, is that Mikel Arteta wasn't there. And I'm sure, like all of us, are sitting watching his TV, going absolutely mental.
God, imagine.
But
his kids must be terrified. He was locked in a room somewhere in his house. They must have been thinking, Jesus, what's going on in there?
But the preparation, the organisation, the work that they've done on the training ground, the clarity of, his instructions, I guess, because a lot of this would have been down to him. The way that he wanted to approach the game and how he felt we should play. And it was interesting. I spoke on the preview podcast to Lewis, and we were talking about previous encounters with Manchester City when Arteta has tried to do something that nobody expected, tried to play a little wild card, if you like, and there was none of that. There was none of that for this. It was like, this is what has worked. This is what we've been doing well. Let's go and do that against Manchester City. And we did.
I think it's a really big credit to the team and the staff. Missing the manager is not insignificant. And I bet it'll be talked about a lot today. Chelsea are about to play Liverpool this afternoon, and Jurgen Klopp's not going to be there on the sidelines. I think the way that, and it's not just Arteta as well, other senior coaching staff have not been present on the training pitch. The preparation, the focus, the concentration of the team was all excellent. The team deserve massive credit too for their part in that. And I thought it was a credit to the club the way that did not feel like a factor in the game. To be frank with you.
Yeah. I think that's a fair point.
What else to say? I mean, it was a bad day of football yesterday, wasn't it? Because not only did we suffer that late heartbreak, but Spurs got a late winner.
I mean, did you see the penalty that Watford didn't get?
I haven't.
Surely there's... let me see if I can find it here. I mean, it's another crazy one where...
Really?
Yeah. Where the hell is it?
I sort of couldn't bear to watch what I assumed would be a Spurs win. I can see some stills of it. It's a guy going round Lloris, right?
Yeah. And he knocks the ball around him. Let me see if I can find it for you here. Is this the clip? I don't want to just play it.
Oh, I've got it. Don't worry.
Yeah. Have a look at this.
So I'm watching it now.
Have a look at... I mean, what the fuck? We can talk about VAR from our own perspective, and people will say, well, you're only saying that because, it's happened to Arsenal. But, you've got to...
I mean, that's clearer cut than anything from our game.
Isn't it ridiculous?
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, and then obviously West Ham went and beat what was a very poor Crystal Palace team until the final 10 minutes. So the results weren't good, but nonetheless, I did come away from the game, and particularly today in the sort of cold light of day, I feel very energised by what Arsenal produced.
Yeah, we've got more refereeing discussions and questions and stuff in part 2, but as I said at the top, our frustration with that shouldn't take away from how good we were yesterday. And I know that there'll be some people saying, well, you can't be good if, in some ways you're the architects of your own downfall. The penalty, the red card, bad defending for the winner, albeit I think you're right to say they got quite a lucky break with how that ball ricocheted. But yeah, you have to look at the entirety of what we did yesterday. And I don't think many people thought we could do that against Man City. And I include myself in that. So if that's your perspective going into this game, the fact that we could do it should be hugely encouraging. How we respond now, how resilient we are. We've talked about character and needing to bounce back and everything else. But it's another little step forward, even if in result terms it's a step backwards. Definitely.
And I think, like I say, I can't remember a time where after losing a game, I've still had that sort of residual feeling of pride. So, yeah, I think that's definite progress.
All right. Well, look, let's take a short break and then come back because there are plenty of questions and lots more to talk about. So we'll do that in part 2 right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part 2 of the show where we answer questions that you sent to us on Twitter at Gunnerblog and at Arseblog. Also on the Arseblog Discord chat server, which you get access to if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon. I'm going to start, James, if you don't mind. And this first question comes from DT DC Gooner, who says, at what point do we just accept that this is what the officiating is? That it will be a chaotic, inconsistent, and occasionally unfair staple of the game. The officiating can't be shocking if it's like this every week. We can't change it. When do we move to accepting it?
That's completely personal, isn't it? I am generally very accepting of it because it's just part of the game, and with or without VAR, whether I like it or not is a separate fact. It's something that we have to contend with, and frankly, I think that most teams have to contend with. I don't personally subscribe to the belief that there's kind of an anti-Arsenal agenda within the PGMOL or anything like that. So yeah, I'm already in that place of acceptance.
Right.
Doesn't mean it doesn't annoy me, but football fans will always be aggravated by decisions.
Sure. But why can't we change it? Why? Well, okay, me and you and people out there can't change it, but why can't it be changed? Why should we accept that it is what it is and not seek for it to be better and to improve it? You know what I mean? This is where I'm coming from with this, because I do think that there is, with the introduction of VAR, we are now experiencing an entirely new raft of problems that VAR was supposed to fix, if you know what I mean. It's highlighting the inconsistency and interpretations, as we spoke about a little bit earlier on. But, there is, I believe, significant room for improvement when it comes to refereeing and how games are refereed. And I'm not saying this just from an Arsenal perspective. I think if you look across the league, and that Watford incident that we just spoke about at the end of part 1 is a perfect example of that. It's not just happening to Arsenal, it is happening across the league. But why should a decision as egregiously wrong as that not spark some kind of punishment is the wrong word, but there is a lack of accountability among the PGMOL and the referees, right? That everybody in this sport, from chairman, well, not all of them, but, managers, players, coaches, they're all accountable based on the level of their performance. If you don't play well, a club is going to sell you. If a manager doesn't win games, he's going to get sacked. If a goalkeeper doesn't make saves, they go out and buy a new goalkeeper. Literally, you are judged on how well you do at the job that you're doing. But that's not there for referees. And there was an interesting conversation with Gunner Punter, at Gunner Punter yesterday on Twitter, and he's saying, improve the salary of referees. Like if you make the salaries better, you will get people coming along and saying, well, this is a decent career path. I'm interested in this, blah, blah, blah. But all that will do, unless you provide transparency from the top of the organisation that runs the refereeing in the Premier League and in England, then it's just going to make their little cozy cartel a bit richer. So yeah. I think you can't just accept when something is bad. And I think most people will accept an element of chaos or random or refereeing being a little bit different from one game to the next in a sport because it's all fast moving. Like there is surely a margin for human error that everybody accepts. But I think most people are able to talk about refereeing and officiating at this moment in time and say the standards aren't good. And that's whether you're an Arsenal fan, a Liverpool fan, I'm sure even Manchester City fans at some point this season will talk about refereeing not being good, despite the fact that, they seem to have the referee onside yesterday. But this sort of blithe acceptance that we should just say, well, okay, they're terrible, but that's part of the fun. I don't think so. I don't know how you change it exactly. I don't know how you go about, but I don't accept that it's something that we should just sit back and say, well, this week it could be good, next week it's going to be terrible. I just don't.
The thing is that I sort of think that, bear in mind, I'm not pro-VAR. I would never have advocated for its introduction. But from what I understand, the objective assessment indicates that the percentage of correct decisions has substantially gone up.
I'd love to see the figures on that.
I mean,
I'm not doubting you.
They exist.
I know.
They do exist.
I know. I'm just saying I'd love to see them. I wasn't doubting you or anything like that. I just say,
yeah, but the thing is, I don't really care that they've gone up. To me, that's not my priority. Weirdly enough, my thing with refereeing is not that I expect kind of objective
flawlessness.
Yeah, I'm relaxed about it. My thing for a referee is I want them to manage games, if you see what I mean. I'm much more concerned with the overall dynamics of a game than the minutiae of an individual decision. And I think that is more important to me to making an interesting or entertaining football spectacle. But I also think that so I would say that probably, at least statistically, referees are getting more right than they ever have done. Whether we perceive that or not is different. But on the other side of the coin, I do think that Gunnar Punner makes a good point. I mean, when you're talking about accountability, the issue is you can demote Saturday's referee, but you got to replace him with somebody.
Yeah.
And I'm just not sure there is a wealth and depth of quality referees. Bear in mind, this is a global league, really, played by players of every different nation. I don't really see why the Premier League could not be more aggressive in recruiting the world's best referees.
It's not a particularly diverse bunch, is it? And the UK is a pretty diverse society, and the Premier League is certainly very diverse in terms of, the players and where they come from and various heritages and all that kind of stuff. But all the referees come from a 25-yard or 25-mile radius of Manchester, which is basically what it is. And that can't be right. That can't be right. And I have a sense, certainly it's what I think, yesterday's performance by Stuart Atwell was kind of not quite straw that broke the camel's back, but it feels to me anyway that so many things have gone against us in terms of officiating this season that this was no, this is fucking bullshit now. When you think about Tomiyasu, getting his face stamped on and not getting a red card. When you think about James MacArthur booting Bukayo Saka in the most clear-cut red card offence you will ever see, accidental or not, it's still a red card offence. Tomiyasu being pulled back against Manchester United. Clearly, if the level of scrutiny that was applied to Granit Xhaka's one yesterday had been applied to that one, then it's a penalty, right? So there's, I think, a sense that we have been a little bit hard done by this season, and in games where the points that we have lost could prove to be really, really damaging when it comes to the end of the season. We still got a lot of time to make up, but if Everton are playing with 10 men after 40 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it was when Godfrey stood on the face of an Arsenal player and didn't get a red card, those fine margins can make a big difference in a season. I don't think we lose yesterday if we go down, if we stay with 11 men, for example. And that sense of injustice that we talked about that united people at the end, I don't think was entirely down to yesterday's refereeing performance. I think it was, in some ways, a culmination of a number of performances this season, which have rightly, I think, infuriated Arsenal fans.
It's interesting because, did you watch Match of the Day last night?
I didn't know.
So they took a very different tack to BT, where they were like, they looked at the referee decisions and they were like, you can make a case for why the outcome was what it was on every single one.
Right.
And Ian Wright was part of that panel, and I was thinking he's going to really lay into these officials. And he sort of sat there and was like, yeah, no, I can see why he didn't give that. I can see why he gave that. It was a very moderate... I mean, they basically said they thought the ref got it all right. And... I don't necessarily think that, but I do think that these decisions, for me, the decisions in the Man City game weren't sort of egregiously wrong. For me, the issue was they were decisions that really felt like they could have gone either way, and they all went against us. It was kind of a collective thing rather than this is pure incompetence. That's just my perception. But it's so interesting. Like it's completely individual. Like when you listed all those events where we've been hard done by, I genuinely just don't carry them with me. Like I don't think about them. They're just not part of how I digest.
That is so interesting.
Game.
That is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really interesting. Because I always. How do I say this? Like I do carry them with me. Then. That's part and parcel of what I do and how I think about things. Because
I think that's most football fans. To be fair.
Yeah. Particularly things which are, like I don't think I've ever seen a foul like the MacArthur one on Saka. Like the one I can remember that was most like it was Shawcross on Ramsey. It was that kind of a thing, that kind of really, really. He kicked very, very hard, and that's why Ramsey's leg shattered. And I think Saka was lucky that it was the back of his leg and not the front. I can't remember a player who's had his face stamped on by an opponent and for nothing to happen to that the man who carried out that foul. Like that's a sort of extraordinary. I think there's a level of extraordinary incidents that we've been involved in that. Maybe I need them for my own sense of injustice or whatever it might be, but
I don't know. But the thing is, and I genuinely don't know the answer to this, but I don't know how extraordinary they are within, like if you watch every Premier League game, do these things go on and we don't realise? Or do you carry the stuff that we get away with you? Like, that would be an interesting question. I imagine the answer is probably not.
What stuff we don't get away with?
Yeah, exactly. But no, I know we're not kicking people up in the air like Saka every week. But yeah, it is just genuinely like it's all. I don't know what it is, but it's just not something that massively bothers me. I'm just very, very tolerating of referees. Makes me a terrible person, I guess.
Yeah, you're part of the problem, man.
I guess I am. Yeah, the referee. It turns out it's not only Mikel Arteta and Josh Kroenke whose payroll I'm on. It's also the PGMOL.
Yeah, you fucking ref lover.
No, I mean, listen. I wish they were better. I do wish they were better, and I think the thing about hire the best people, make it a more attractive job, a more competitive job.
Yeah,
seems like a very logical way to improve it. But I do basically, at a core level, have a large degree of sympathy with quite how difficult what they're doing is.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I fully accept that it is a difficult job. No two ways about it. But I don't think the protection that they're awarded, that's the wrong way of putting it. I think there's a cohort of people who will say, well, refereeing is such a difficult job, just accept it. Just, accept the fact that they're going to make mistakes. It's a tough job. Everyone's screaming at you. Nobody likes you. Yeah, I see that point of view. I absolutely do. And I don't doubt for a second that it's a difficult job. But at the same time, not seeking to implement measures which could raise the standards of officiating, and thus, the other part of this is that if the officiating is better, the football is probably going to be better too. Like the football spectacle is
Yeah.
going to be better. I mean, we had a couple of questions here while we're sort of on this. Let me see. Okay, from the Discord. Boom shakalaka. There's been some talk of the referee ruining the game by sending off Gabrielle. Do you think it should be their responsibility to try and keep 22 players on the pitch? Do you think they consider this when they make these decisions? And then, let me see. Also on the Discord, Emil Smith-Rowe, your boat, he says, to what extent are pundits missing the point about these refereeing decisions? The penalties and sendings off were all marginal calls, so they weren't necessarily wrong, but when each marginal call goes the way of the other team, isn't that just as galling as an egregious error? As Clive said on the Arsevision podcast, which I haven't had a chance to listen to yet, Atwell didn't have to send Gabriel off, especially since he wasn't showing City players yellow cards for anything. Are refs just missing common sense in some of these instances?
Well, I think this is where it gets really interesting, because I completely agree that more common sense should be applied in football, but common sense and an objective truth about what is and isn't a yellow card don't necessarily sit hand in hand. And I think every game has its own tempo, its own politics, its own dynamics. I don't think you can referee a derby in the same way you can another game. I actually am someone who sort of thinks that personality and subjectivity in a referee has value, because I see the role as sort of orchestrating a game rather than being a robot. But the issue is that when you go to the lengths of introducing things like VAR, I think you are implicitly striving for objectivity that you can never truly deliver. And that's why it's so unsatisfying.
I mean, the Gabrielle sending off, I think, is the quintessential example of why there ought to be sin bin.
Yeah, I completely agree.
In the heat of that moment, you can look, I'm not saying he was smart to do it, but you can kind of understand a foul, right? And if you're a referee and you know the game and whatever it is, you played the game, you've got to understand the players and you've got to understand how they're feeling. And is what Gabriel did in that moment truly worthy of him missing the rest of the game, Arsenal
and the whole next game,
and Arsenal being down to 10 men? And the spectacle of that football match, which was a great football match that we were all enjoying, is completely changed, because now it's lopsided. The sporting integrity, whatever you want to call it, is not there anymore. Like, Arsenal have been quite harshly punished within the rules as they stand. We get it, but I don't think his offence should merit that kind of a sanction, right? And what could easily have happened, or what should happen in a situation like that, is the referee takes out his orange card or whatever it is and says, you're in the sin bin for 10 minutes, cool your head and come back and you can play the rest of the game. You know what I mean? I mean, these are the sort of changes I think that we can think about and we can discuss when it comes to the standards of officiating, because right now it's sort of black and white. It's either a red card or it's not a red card, or it's a penalty or it's not. You know, he doesn't have any choice. There is no leeway. I realize as well that this will open up another layer of subjectivity, where people will say that's never an orange card, that's an absolute second yellow. That's, you know, it will do, but why not give it a try? Because at the end of the day, people are paying a fucking fortune for their match tickets. They're paying a fortune for their TV subscriptions. You know, all of these kind of things. If you accept that at some level this is an entertainment medium as well as a sport, there should be some onus on maintaining the level of entertainment that you're giving people, instead of killing a game because it's got hot in a couple of minutes because of a couple of incidents and one player has just very slightly lost his head. You know, I think there's a big discussion to be had there.
Yeah, definitely. And the orange card is one way to do that. But I also think if you're... It's interesting because all the calls are for consistency, but actually I think that in that situation, the benefit would be a bit of inconsistency. The benefit would be saying, as a referee, I can look at that foul and see that objectively is probably a yellow card for the second one. But do I think that plus what he did before necessitates him being out of the game for the remainder and missing the next game? And I genuinely think a referee in that position should have the license to manage that situation and realise that he can go up to Gabriel and say, you are on a fine line, son.
Yeah.
You're lucky to not have gone off there.
Ref got heated up. That's what it was as well.
Yeah, the ref got heated up. And actually... There was an interesting question about this. I'll just have a quick look at it now. It's on the Discord. It said, Simon Partey King said, did the players make their bed with the referee by surrounding him at every opportunity? I know we've been lauding the team standing up for itself, but is that particular habit starting to boil the piss of the refs? Do you think there might be something to do with that?
I think the player's reaction to the penalty being given was in many ways driven by the referee's own reaction to the foul in real time. When he looked at it and saw it as a player, if not necessarily diving, but he wasn't fouled in order to make him go down. You know what I mean? So then all of a sudden the referee is changing his mind and they're saying, well, hang on a minute. You were quite vociferous. You were quite obvious in what you thought of that incident when you saw it. And now, and of course, you're going to object when there's the potential of a penalty being given against you and all the rest of it. I think that's normal. But I don't think we started surrounding the referees until after that. I don't think there was any pressuring of referees or any of that until such time as the game started to get heated and after Gabriel got sent off. I mean, Bukayo Saka got booked for, I think they said he gestured or asked the referee why it was probably Rodri, I don't know if it was, but some Man City player committed what I think was a borderline yellow card foul on Lacazette, I think it was, where he just basically barged into him. And Saka asks the question and gets booked. I don't really have any issue with us standing up for ourselves. I feel like we've been too passive and too nice. And I've said this before. Like, I don't want us chasing the referee around the pitch like the way Roy Keane did with Andy D'Urso that time, with the veins popping out of his head or anything like that. But I think we also need to... we need not to be pushovers. Sometimes that will go for you with a referee, sometimes it won't. I guess you have to know the character of the referee. Like, I think if you go around haranguing Mike Dean from the first whistle, you're going to get fuck all in the game. That's not smart, But,
yeah, and I think you're right. The referee's temperature did raise here. That's why you booked Gabriel for basically nothing on the first one. Maybe as a team we misjudged that situation, but I wouldn't want to take that streak out of the team. I think it's been an important part of their development, even if I think you could argue it did cost us. It's a really interesting one. I think that the VAR is not going anywhere, but it could certainly be refined the way it's being used, and I think trying to hire the best referees available, you're doing it with the players. Why would you not do it with the referees?
Yeah.
Should we have a different question?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, so this is Sharath Prabhu on Twitter, and Sharath says, on a very different note, out of all the positive things to come out of the City match, which one is your favourite and why?
I don't think there's sort of one thing in particular. I think it's just the fact that we were able to play that way against a team like Manchester City. There were like loads of moments and things to be encouraged about, and we've talked about some of the individuals and we've talked about some of the moments that they've been involved in. But for me, it's just a collective thing. It's not like the goal was great. Some of the defending was great. I talked about Tomiyasu. Partey's performance was absolutely sensational. All of those things are great, but it's just as a whole, they did more than I thought they were going to be able to do. They did more than I was expecting them to do. And to me, that's
your expectations. Yeah.
And to me, that's really encouraging. Which is why I was asking the question earlier, like, even though they're down and out and they're feeling absolutely shit about everything, when the final whistle blows, I don't think this will be a damaging defeat. I think this will be the kind of defeat from which you can take a lot of encouragement as a team. I know, like, if I was imagining the worst case possible scenario for everybody listening to this, that like if I was an Arsenal player and I played in that game yesterday, I'd be absolutely sick, but I'd still feel like the team had gone somewhere that I didn't think it could go. And when that comes to the next game and other performances, it can only be a positive thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ramsdale used the word fearless in his post-match interview, and that is the way they played. And that's hugely positive. My favourite thing is definitely that moment at full time when the fans sort of rose to give their appreciation for the players. And I think, that relationship has not been particularly healthy in recent years for lots of different reasons. But I love Arsenal, the club and the team and the players, and I love the fans too. And I'm the child of divorced parents, and sometimes it's just felt like I just want mum and dad to get along. Do you know what I mean? Like those two entities, I just desperately want them to be happy together. And my parents aren't ever going to get back together, but it feels like the Arsenal fans and the Arsenal players are experiencing a kind of a blossoming of their romance again, and that's lovely. Liz
Taylor and Richard Burton getting married for a second time or third time or whatever it might be.
Yeah, but they have been a bit estranged.
Yeah. No, I said this today on the blog that there is a connection. You can feel it. Like it's easy to feel connected to this team because they're trying their fucking best for you, and you can reciprocate that if you're in the stands, if you're lucky enough to be at the games. That is a really important thing. And I know it was maybe easy to be cynical when Mikel Arteta talked about this a lot, particularly during lockdown and at a period when the football we were playing wasn't great and the results weren't great. And, when he talked about the fans, people, could have taken a cynical view and said, well, of course he's going to talk like that. He wants to keep them on side. But at the same time, you can feel that it is important for the fans and the team to be as united as they can possibly be. Games like yesterday, it's evident from the crowd, the way they reacted in the stands. I genuinely love when it's us against them. I love the sense of us against them. And you only get it really when you're good, or when you're potentially good, or nobody cares about a team that isn't going to do anything. So to have a sense of it's us against the world, I really like that. I've always liked that. I've always liked that about Arsenal. Arsene Wenger's red card shame. Fuck off. Mikel Arteta's
100 Premier League red cards, by the way, yesterday.
First team ever to do it. Yeah, well done. I like it. Red cards, go fuck yourselves and your fucking red cards. We're not a dirty team by any stretch of the imagination, and some people have all viewed the number of sendings off as like, oh, Arsenal, they're fucking, they're a dirty side or whatever it might be. I like that, and I think that was something that we could take from yesterday as well. I like the unification of the fans against a common enemy, if that's not over-egging the pudding a little bit, but that's the way you've got to look at it from a footballing perspective. Every team you play is the enemy, and it should be that. And it is slightly damaging and destructive when, for reasons I think we all understand, it feels like there's infighting, if that makes sense. You know, we can all understand why, but it's no good. It's not good. And this is much better and it's far preferable. So,
completely agree.
Magnus Holmberg, at Magnus Holmberg, at Magnus_Holmberg, I apologize, says, hey guys, not to have the usual Xhaka debate, but with fine margins defining the outcome of games, can any club afford to have a player, Xhaka or otherwise, with a target on their back? Should the weight of his reputation in itself be enough to replace him next summer? I think this is a really interesting
it's a really
discussion.
Good point.
Can I ask you this? Do you think that the fact it was Xhaka who made the foul, if you like, for the Man City penalty had a bearing on how it was viewed?
I'm sure it does. I mean, it's impossible for it to not, right? Whether or not someone's able to discount that, but he has enough baggage that it travels with him into every situation. I mean, I think you could even make the point of are his flaws as a player so universally known that it factors into Bernardo taking the decision to pull off that move in the penalty box against him? You know, is he already thinking, well, I'm going to swing this outside him and start going to ground because it's Granit Xhaka and the chances are I'll be quicker than him and he'll stick a leg out. And with referees and with officials, I think we know now that he carries that baggage. Is that in itself enough of a factor to move on from him? No. But I think amongst other things, it's certainly something that you should consider. And I'm sure they must. It's interesting, isn't it? I was speaking to Amy Lawrence on Handbrake Off earlier today, and she said, I wonder if, you know, Mikel Arteta and Arsene Wenger and all these managers who pick Granit Xhaka time and time again, when he does the Granit Xhaka stuff, the bad stuff, basically, I wonder how they feel. Like, do they feel as exasperated as us? What is that moment like? Is there a kind of internal, oh, for fuck's sake, Granit? There must be. Essentially, it would be impossible for Mikel Arteta, Edu, everyone at Arsenal to not be aware of the problems with Xhaka as well as the positives. And so I'm sure that will factor in any decision they make over what they do in that area of the pitch. I still think Arsenal will sign a central midfielder in the next 6 months, certainly before the start of next season, and I think it'll be somebody to start in that position. What do you think?
I just think it is a really interesting aspect to a player when there is, or when he has a reputation. You know, some of it's deserved and some of it maybe isn't. But like you say, he's got plenty of baggage. There have been plenty of incidents in the past where he has been clumsy and he has been given away penalties and he has made challenges which are a little too robust or whatever. And people come to associate, like, you don't get the benefit of the doubt. There comes a point where you no longer get the benefit of the doubt. And then it becomes a question of, can you offset that, or does he offset that enough with what else he does? I mean, we talk about
a player who's a serial diver, right? You know, it's like after a while they're going to stop getting free kicks, and even if they cut out the diving, they're probably not getting a free kick for a long time. And it's not the same situation, but it's a similar thing. There is a perception of Xhaka that exists, but I don't want to just adhere to the line of, oh, it's all perception. I mean, you know, he's still making mistakes out there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like its perception maybe plays into the decision to award the penalty yesterday, but I would argue whether it's Granit Xhaka or it's Thomas Partey or anybody else, for me it is a penalty.
Yeah, look, we talked about his role in the goal, and I think after we went down to 10 men, his defensive work was really good. He blocked a couple of shots, apart from the one moment where he decided to go chasing around the pitch. It wasn't long actually after the red card, and
yes,
he went
that was
pressing,
unwise.
and he went running around, and I was going, oh, just stop, because he was, I think he was genuinely like a couple of strides away from running himself into a second yellow card. That he just about stopped after he chased down the goalkeeper and everything else, and he got pulled. You know, he shouldn't be doing that when we're down to 10 men. You know, stay in your lane. But yeah,
literally,
literally. Which when he did, he was good.
I mean, I thought people hate when you say stuff like this, but I thought apart from the penalty incident, I thought he was very good.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, that's the thing. Like, what was the analogy I used on the blog? Like, he's the postman who delivers your mail every day of the week. Fine, but like every couple of months, he just throws a brick through your front window. You know, and that's the thing. There's when he makes a mistake, it's not usually a small one.
No, and actually, I have to say, as someone who I'd say I've stood up for him because I think that there is something to be said for his role in the group. I think that stuff does matter, and so I understand the status that he holds within the squad. But in the last 3 or 4, maybe even 5 games, there's been a moment in the second half where I've thought, oh, why have you done that? And it's happened with some consistency. We used to talk about, like every 7 games or every 10 games they'll do something stupid. But they're, you know, whether it be a needless challenge or a booking for a confrontation he didn't necessarily need to get into, or a foul in the penalty box. And there are different justifications for all these things. You know, he's left isolated, he's standing up for a teammate, whatever it might be. He is just an absolute lightning rod for trouble. And
at some point you have to think about that when you're thinking about your team.
But the reality is, in the next few weeks, I mean, we lose Thomas Partey now, so he's going to be very important in the immediate term. But I think Arsenal were exploring the idea of moving on from Granit Xhaka last summer, or moving on from, let's say, and I think they will again next summer. And I think they will in January if they can get the right guy. I think they will do it, but I think it's more likely something that would be addressed in the summer. A
slight question on a tangent from this then. Silent Fox 1, who's on the Discord, says, what's your preferred central midfield pairing with Partey going to AFCON? Of course, Mohamed El Neni going to AFCON as well. So is it a straight Albert Sambi Lokonga in for Partey swap?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the shape of the midfield has slightly changed, where Partey has been the guy operating, I think, in those deeper areas a lot of the time, taking the ball off the defence. Xhaka's been a bit higher up. This is sort of a rhetorical question, but feel free to answer it. Do you trust Lokonga in that role? Do you trust Xhaka in that role, right in front of the defence? I'm not sure of the exact configuration of how you'd work it, but I think Lokonga is the obvious choice. And it feels almost, I mean, I know he's had an illness, but I also feel like he's almost been sort of saved for this period.
I wonder have they been working with him on that, you know, because I think there's what's the word Arteta likes to use specificity to the roles that the players are instructed to carry out. So I wonder if the fact he hasn't played a great deal of late, look, Partey has been in and has been improving over the last few weeks, so that's good. But I wonder if it's something that they've been prepping him for. You know, they knew Partey was going to be going away. They knew they were going to need a solution. So maybe that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you pick Lokonga too to replace Partey?
I mean, I think so.
I don't know what choice you've got, really. I mean,
well, you have Maitland-Niles, and that's basically it. Or you maybe reconfigure, you know, where you play Xhaka with Odegaard and maybe Smith Rowe ahead of him. I mean, that's one way you could do it, but I don't know if we should really tinker that much. It feels a little bit like, you know, last season when we moved Xhaka to left back. Too many other parts were affected by that decision. So, yeah, things have been going pretty well. So more or less stick with what's working. Partey for Lokonga, it's not like for like, but it's similar.
Yeah, I think he's got the potential to play that role in the future, and let's see how he gets on. This is a slightly different tack from PMCC232 on Discord. Simple one: are we downplaying the League Cup semi-finals too much? Is winning a trophy a big step for this group?
Well, it certainly wouldn't hurt. It really wouldn't.
I wouldn't say no. No,
I definitely wouldn't say no either. Yeah, we had a couple of questions about this. I mean, can you really downplay a two-legged semi-final against Liverpool? Like, that's not the kind of fixture. Even if they're going to rotate, and they will to some extent, they're still going to put out a strong team. I know they don't have Salah and they don't have Mane, but we don't have Partey and we don't have Pepe and we don't have Aubameyang. Whether we'll ever have him again remains to be seen. So squads aren't so deep that Jurgen Klopp is just going to play all the kids. I don't think that's the case. And when you get to the semi-final stage of a competition, you've got to take it seriously. No two ways about it. And I think we'll be pretty strong for the first leg. I know there's an FA Cup game at the weekend as well. We might rotate a little more for that, but I think we'll be fairly strong. So
I think we'll be stronger for Thursday than Sunday, let's put it like that.
I agree, and I don't know that you can downplay it. We only have 3 competitions that we can win, or 3 trophies to play for this season, and realistically 2. So, yeah, I think we're going to go for it. And winning a trophy, if these guys can go all the way and win in a final, what a brilliant thing that would be. For very obvious reasons, because you've won a trophy, and you've won a final, and you've stood up and you've done it on a big stage and everything else. But I think as well for the development of the team and for the belief in it and the belief that they will have in themselves and everything else. Like, I don't think Arsenal win the league at Anfield in 1989 if they don't win the Littlewoods Cup or Coca-Cola Cup or whatever it was at that point in 1987. When they beat Liverpool in the final at Wembley, 2 goals from Charlie Nicholas. I think small things like that are formative. Small things, do you hear me? Things like that are formative. At the end of the day, there are very few trophies and a lot of teams. So if you can be one of the teams that's got a trophy at the end of the season, then great. So
yeah, and while Arteta has won a trophy before at Arsenal, a lot of these players have not. And I mean, to underline the degree of change that happened since then, Bukayo Saka didn't even get off the bench that day in that FA Cup final. So I think it would be a massive thing for the group. I think Arsenal will go pretty strong Thursday. I don't think there will be many changes. Gabriel will be suspended for that one, I believe. But I don't see loads of, and Partey obviously will go off to AFCON, but I don't see loads of changes. I think we will sense an opportunity. I mean, this is a Liverpool that won't have Salah and Mane, presumably. They've got other COVID problems in the squad. Yeah.
I think there's
a chance.
Yeah, I think there's a need to sort of try and regain some momentum, if at all possible.
Yeah, I think in a way it's a good fixture to have now, because we come out of that City game feeling like we really performed and we deserved more. Well, if we want to prove our point, that we can hang with the big boys, we've got a great chance on Thursday.
Yeah. Let me see. Did I have one more? I think I had... that's a bit of a depressing one.
Okay.
I'll ask you anyway.
Go on.
FPL Manatee says, we have some unbelievable young talent, but how concerned are you that the likes of Smith Rowe, Saka and Martinelli might be poached by a City or a Liverpool? Should we be realists and plan for this eventuality, just as Liverpool had a plan with the Coutinho money?
Do you know what? Someone else, I tweeted last night saying, something very sort of sentimental about how proud
much
I
you love
was of the
referees.
team. And how much I love referees, and I just thought all the refereeing was brilliant. And somebody replied, I can't find it now. Bless, who was it? Damn. But yes, here we go. Philosopher on Twitter. Philosopher. They said, honestly, I'm getting anxious about these players staying together, which I haven't experienced since around 2011. And it is a good point, when you've got something good, you do start to project and worry.
But that's it. I mean, how long did we spend fretting over the future of like Vieira and Pires and Fabregas and Van Persie because they're fucking good players.
It was never the same with Mustafi. We weren't worried about him being poached.
I would have poached, boiled, fried, scrambled, whatever you want to do with Mustafi is fine by me.
Yeah. I think it is a little bit of a worry. I don't think we're quite there yet. I think that there's a lot of players here under long-term contract, and I do think that the next few years I think will be relatively insulated against that. I think if we fall short in that period, it might be something to consider. But I have to be honest and say that when you look at how effective our recruitment has been since January of last year, when we brought Martin Odegaard in on loan, and the summer that we had after that, it maybe doesn't fill me with quite the fear it might have done a few years ago.
Yeah.
And that's part of football,
It's all about being good, really. You keep your good players if you're a good team, and if they feel they can win things, if they feel like they can go somewhere and achieve their ambitions in the game with Arsenal, then, it's much more difficult for the likes of Liverpool or Man City or whoever might be, top of the table or whatever, to lure them away, because they're like, well, this is my club. I'm not going to you. But if Arsenal are struggling or what have you, I thought this is a final question. I think it's a 2-word answer. I'm going to challenge you to get it. Peter Hust, at Peter Hust, says, Happy New Year, gents. Happy New Year to you. In 2020, Arsenal signed players like Pablo Mari, Cedric Willian and Alex Runerson. But then in 2021, it was a near-perfect summer window with 6 brilliant signings who have all made an impact. What do you think has changed from one year to the next?
Do you want me to say Raul Sanllehi?
Far be it from me to put words in your mouth, but that was what I thought.
Well, I've actually got a longer answer to this.
Go on, then.
But I don't know if it's worth doing.
Raul!
I think that that is part of it. I think that Edu. So I think Edu deserves a lot of credit, actually, and I know people will have question marks over that because he was party to some decisions that a lot of fans did not like. But I think you have to give people credit when they appear to adapt and change. And if I think back to, say, for example, the culling of the scouting team, which felt like an idiotic and disastrous move at the time, and you look at that 18 months on, and the more streamlined approach Arsenal have taken, I think you have to say that maybe it was necessary. And I basically think that Edu is not Sven Mislintat. He is not a brilliant diamond-eyed scout who's out there picking the best players. But my increasing impression is that what he is someone who's incredibly personable and quite adept at putting structures in place. And basically what you've got at Arsenal now is plenty of smart people working for Edu that he's prepared to listen to. And even down to like the data side. Data is as big a part of the recruitment process at Arsenal now as it has ever been. And what I'm saying is that in that role as technical director, sometimes we think, we need like a genius. We need like a maverick, Ralph Rangnick or Sven Mislintat. And that can be true. But also maybe it's okay in that role to just be a good, intelligent, adept manager of people and organisations. And that is my impression of the situation at Arsenal now. The organisation is very coherent. Everybody feels like they're on the same page. The sharing of information, the sharing of data is really strong. And there is a clear process. And when a signing is made, whatever anybody's individual arguments about that player during that process, there's a sort of collective acceptance of we followed our process and this is where we got to.
That's a much more interesting answer. Thank you. No, genuinely, and I think it probably merits more discussion at some point.
Yeah, I just think that I've slightly changed. I was very worried, I have to say, during all the kind of Kia Jarabchian, very agent-led stuff. I don't mind saying I was, and as any listeners will know, I had real concerns about that. It seems to me that Edu has either learned very quickly that that's just not going to fly at Arsenal, and I suspect that is part of it, but also has now had time to implement structures, procedures, stuff. And like now, Arsenal are hiring scouts, real life, in-person scouts across Europe in different regions. The structure now that it sort of exists is being built out again, but in a much more coherent way. How many times over the years did we hear about like this player was a Stat DNA signing and this one was a Kagigao signing and they never wanted Mustafi but they did, and these guys picked El Neni but the others said no.
There's so many stories around that. Think about Juan Mata and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, infighting and sort of like departments being like not on the same page. And where I have to give Edu credit is that in going through a big cull of people, he has created a recruitment structure in which, and these things change, but as things stand, I think everybody feels that they have a voice and feel like they're working towards the same goal. And while Edu himself, we might have question marks over, his relationships or him as an individual, but there is a management skill to that I think he deserves some credit for, even if it's just listening to the opinion of smart people and knowing when to trust them.
I thought the Mertesacker quote last week was so interesting.
What did he say?
He basically said, we lost our way. Paraphrasing, they were trying to implement quick fixes or, the sort of Socrates style signings, 29-year-old Willian signings. They were trying to get back into the top four, understandably in a way, by bringing in experienced players who they felt could sort of bridge that gap. But that was not really a good way of doing it, as we saw. But for somebody that high up, as the academy manager and as somebody who's part of the football executive crew at Arsenal, who works, alongside Arteta and Edu and all the rest of them, to say we lost our way tells you a lot. And as we can see... And
it took time. It definitely took time to sort of sift through the wreckage of that and go through a period of renewal in staff terms, in structure terms, in all terms. But I think we are in a much healthier place. And that's why when you get to conversations about, like, what if we lost Saka or what if we lost Martinelli, if you are, A, we hope that doesn't happen, but B, if you are prepared and if you have strategy, then that's less frightening, Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can find a way, like you're not going to get another Saka out of your academy straight away. But yeah, I think you're right that if losing one piece leaves you, in bits, it doesn't speak to how well organised you are behind the scenes, in general. So, I think this is...
But be prepared to throw all this out when we sign Coutinho next week for 100 million or something.
Oh, well, no, he couldn't. We can't. It won't. I don't want to think about that. The way you don't want to think about referee things? I don't want to think about that. All right. I think we should leave it there for now because we have had a very lengthy chat about everything that's going on. So once again, Happy New Year to you, James. Happy New Year to all of you listening. May 2022 be a far superior year than 2021. I hope you stay happy and healthy and successful. And thank you as always for being here. We really appreciate it. We will have an Arsecast Extra on Friday, actually, after the first leg of the Liverpool Carabao Cup semi-final. So join us for that. We'll have some more stuff on Patreon during the week as well. Until the next one, take it easy.
Bye-bye.